Hey there and welcome back. Now, one of the key benefits of switching over to the Responses API is it simplifies the way in which we can send both text and images to these models. So in this video, we'll have a look at the different ways in which we can send messages to this API, and that includes sending a combination of text and images, and more than one image as well. Let's jump into it. In the root of our project, let's create a new file, and let's call this lesson2.py. I'm also going to activate my virtual environment by running venv, scripts, and activate. We already had a look at setting up the virtual environment and starting it in the previous video. So in this file, let's set a few things up. Let's start by importing OpenAI and .env. So at the top of the file, let's import OpenAI, and I'm actually just going to disable cursor. And let's also pull in our environment variables by saying from .env import load.env. And finally, to load everything into the script, let's run load.env and parentheses to execute this function. Let's instantiate our OpenAI client by creating a variable called client, which is equal to OpenAI, like so. Now you might recall, in order to send a message to this client, we can type client.responses.create. Then we can pass a few parameters to this method. The first is the model, and for the model name, let's use GPT-40-mini. For the second parameter, we have to pass in the input messages, and as I mentioned in the previous video, I like to create a separate variable which contains the list of messages. So let's create that list. I'll call it input messages, which is equal to a list. And then this takes in a few dictionaries with the keys of role. And for this one, I'll simply enter user. And for the second key, we have to provide content. And this will contain the user message, like hello there. Now all we have to do is copy this variable and pass that into this create method. Let's then assign the response to a response variable. And finally, let's print the response. So print response.output text. Cool. Let's run this in the terminal just to make sure that everything is still working. So I'll type lesson2.py. Cool, so we get this response back, meaning everything was set up correctly. You might recall in the previous video that I mentioned that we could pass the message like this, or the content of the message could actually be a list as well. So here we could pass multiple different content into the same prompt. For the first object, we could set the type of input text, and the second key will contain the actual text, which we could simply make, hey, how are you again? And if we had to run this in the terminal, everything will still work exactly as it did before. The big difference is we can now pass multiple objects into the same prompt. So let's say we wanted to send some text along with an image and then get the model to describe the image for us. This is similar to the behavior you would expect in something like ChatGPT, where you might send some text like describe the image, and you would then also attach the image to this chat. Like, let's upload this image as an example, and you will now see that we're not sending different messages, right? We've attached some file or an image, and we're also sending the user message at the same time. So when we send this, we're sending both the image as well as our prompt, and the model does come back and describe the image. So this is exactly what we want to do. So first, we want to send some text like, please describe this image. And now we also want to pass in a second dictionary which contains the actual image. So how do we attach images to this? You basically have two options, and we will look at both in this video. We can either send the URL to an image, or we can pass in the Base64 encoded version of the image. And I will explain both approaches and when to use what during this video. Let's look at passing a URL first. Let's set the type as we did before with the input text, but the type of this dictionary is of type input_image. That's simple enough, right? Input text for the prompt and input image for the image. Now for the second key, because we're uploading an image, we need to provide the image URL. And as I mentioned, we could now pass in a Base64 encoded version of the image or a URL. So if you built an application where the user uploaded an image to some S3 bucket, or maybe you simply want to describe an image that's uploaded somewhere online, all you have to do is paste in the URL to that image. In fact, if I open up this URL, it brings up this image over here. All that's left now is to test this. So again, in the terminal, let's run this file, and after about 2 seconds, we get this response saying, the image captures a moment from a basketball game, showing several players in action near the basketball loop. Awesome, so this seems to be working. Now, realistically, you don't always want to point to URLs. In the ChatGPT example, it's very unlikely that ChatGPT is simply storing that image on a server somewhere. In some cases, you simply just want to grab the image from the form in its raw Base64 representation and pass that directly into this conversation. Or if you have a local file, for example, let's actually add a file into this project directory. I'm simply going to rename this file to make it a bit easier to work with. So I'll just call this image.png. So what we can do is convert this into a Base64 representation and pass it into this API. Of course, you could do the same thing if you're receiving this image via a form in your application. So first, let's write a simple utility function that will grab our image and convert it to Base64. So let's start our function and let's call it encode image. And let's take in the image path as input. Now for the logic, let's open the image with the with statement, open. Let's use the image path. And for the mode, we'll use RB. And we'll store this as image_file. And all we have to do now is return Base64. And we just have to add it to the top as well. So let's say import Base64. And on this we can call Base64 Encode. Be sure to use the encode and not the decode method. And now we just have to pass in the file. So we call this image file.read. So this simply opens up the file. And on this we can call decode and let's pass in UTF-8. This is nothing too complicated, just a simple utility function to convert this local file into Base64. Now let's actually use this function. So just below this, let's call Base64_image is equal to, and let's call our function, so encode image, and for the path, let's pass in the root folder /image.png. So this file name over here. Now that we have our image converted into Base64, all we have to do is replace this string, so this URL, with an F string. So we'll type F, then double quotes, and data, image/JPEG, semicolon, Base64, comma, and then curly braces, and the name of our Base64 image. This is simply telling the API the format of the content being passed in, which is an image of type Base64. And that should be it. Let's run this in the terminal. And if we open up this image, we can see the description is indeed correct. This image features a young woman showcasing an elegant and ornate look. She has long, flowing hair, ornamented with a pink flower and fresh roses. Awesome. Now you can also pass in more than one image at a time. And again, if you're familiar with using ChatGPT's interface, you can indeed send the prompt along with multiple attachments. And this couldn't be any easier. All we have to do is attach as many other dictionaries as we want. I'm actually just going to copy this one and add it down here. And let's send a combination of a Base64 image along with the URL. So this one we can leave as the Base64 image. And for this one, let's pass in that URL again. For the prompt, let's enter something like, please describe these images. Cool. Let's run this in the terminal. And how cool is that? Let's expand this a bit. And here we can see that image 1 is of a young woman with its description, and image 2 is of a basketball game with its description. Hopefully you'll agree, working with images could not be any easier through this API. In the next video, we'll have a look at stateful interactions, which is a really simple way to deal with conversation history in our chat applications. I'll see you in the next one.